So, when you think about Pakistan's air power, you're probably picturing fighter jets, right? But what if I told you there's another massive aerial force out there, one that works hand in glove with the troops on the ground and is absolutely critical to the country's defense? Today, we're taking a deep dive into the powerful and honestly often overlooked Pakistan Army Aviation Corps. Let's just start with this number right here, 661. So, what's that all about? Well, that's the total number of aircraft in the Pakistan Army Aviation Corps. Yeah, it's a huge fleet, way bigger than you might expect, and it makes them one of the most significant forces of their kind in the entire region. But what do they actually do with all that hardware?
Okay, so it's really important to get this straight. This is not a separate Air Force. The Aviation Corps is part of the Army, through and through. Its main job, its whole reason for being, is to directly support the soldiers on the ground. We're talking everything from attack helicopter cover during a firefight to flying in supplies or getting wounded soldiers out of harm's way. They're literally the Army's eyes, ears, and immediate backup in the sky.
Right, so a force with over 600 aircraft doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. To really understand what it is today, we've got to go back in time, because its origins are way more humble and started with a very, very different mission. The whole story actually starts with tactics straight out of the World War II era. You know, before you had attack helicopters and all that, these small, really simple planes would fly over the battlefield. And they had one job: be the eyes for the artillery. They tell the guys on the ground where the shells were landing, giving them a bird's eye view to hit their targets. It was a vital job for sure, but a fundamentally basic one. So how did they get from there to here? Well, it was a gradual evolution, but a total transformation. It all kicks off in 1947, when they inherit just a single flight of these spotter planes. By 58, it's an official part of the Army. But the real game changer, that comes in 1970, when they get their first attack helicopters. That's the moment they shift from just watching to actively fighting, which leads to them becoming the full-fledged aviation corps we know today in 1978. I mean, just look at the difference here. It is night and day. They went from basically helping artillery guys aim better and flying little liaison missions to what they are now, a full-spectrum combined arms service that is absolutely essential for modern warfare. The leap in what they can do is just massive. And, to really get a feel for how huge that jump was, you have to look at the machines they started with. The technology back then, it was a completely different world from what they're flying today. Okay, so check out some of these early birds. You had the Oster 5, a super simple fixed-wing plane just for observation. Then, in 1964, you get the Bell OH-13 Sioux. This was the very first helicopter the Pakistan Army ever operated. If you've ever seen the old TV show MASH, you know exactly what this looks like, that iconic bubble canopy. These were the planes and choppers that built the foundation of the Corps. All right, let's jump forward to today. The difference between those early machines and what's in the inventory right now, whoa, it's just staggering. This is where we really see the modern, powerful force in action. Hey, remember that big number we started with, 661? Well, here's how it all breaks down. You can see right away the fleet is dominated by helicopters. They make up nearly 400 of the total aircraft. And that heavy focus, that tells you everything you need to know about their main job: direct, flexible support for the troops on the ground. And what I find really fascinating is where all this gear comes from. It's a real mix. You've got American-made AH-1 Cobras, which have been the backbone of their attack fleet for decades, flying right alongside Russian Mi-17 transport workhorses, and now even Chinese Z-10 attack helicopters. This isn't an accident. It's a very deliberate strategy to not rely on any one country for equipment. It gives them options. And speaking of new gear, the introduction of the Chinese Z-10 ME is a really big deal. It shows a clear push to modernize their attack helicopter fleet, and it really shines a spotlight on Pakistan's growing defense ties with China. This aircraft right here is a pretty good indicator of where the Corps is headed in the future. Helicopters tend to get all the glory, but the fixed-wing fleet is just as critical. The real workhorse here is the Pak Mashak, which is actually a locally produced trainer. This is where every single pilot gets their start. Then you have these specialized planes, like the King Air, for reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. You just can't fight a modern war without assets like these. But flying these incredible machines, often in really difficult terrain and under a ton of pressure, it's not a video game. It comes with some very real dangers. And we have to talk about the human side of this and the profound risks that come with this kind of service.
The thing is, when you're dealing with this kind of complex technology in tough environments, on missions where everything is on the line, well, the margin for error is just incredibly small. And this is the hard reality of that risk. The dangers are constant, and they happen not just in combat, but during humanitarian missions like flood relief, or even on peacekeeping operations thousands of miles from home. These aren't just headlines or statistics. Every single one of these incidents represents a devastating loss. And that's a really important point. The danger isn't just about getting shot at. Take the Las Vegas crash in 2022. That happened during a flood relief operation. The cause? Just terrible weather. It's a tragic reminder that the operational hazards of flying can be just as deadly as any enemy. So from a tiny artillery spotting unit to this high-tech combined arms force we see today, the evolution of the Pakistan Army Aviation Corps has been pretty remarkable. But warfare is always changing, right? With drones, AI, and all sorts of new aerial tech coming online, the big question is, how will this vital corps adapt and change for the battlefields of tomorrow?